Exclusive contract with Feilu Novel Network Novel. Daqin. Many sons, many blessings, creating an eternal family. Upon waking up, Ye Xuan unexpectedly traveled to the Qin Dynasty in the TV drama Myth. Together with Ye Xiaochuan and Gao Yao, they survived in the world of Daqin. However, as soon as Ye Xuan crossed over, he activated the multi-child and multi-blessing system. As long as Ye Xuan had a large family of children and grandchildren, the greater the family's influence, the more rewards he would receive. So, Ye Xuan began his happy and beautiful life. By comparison, Ye Xiaochuan and Gao Yao are in dire straits. When Ye Xuan was appointed as an official and conferred the title of nobility, with endless scenery, Ye Xiaochuan and Gao Yao were on the run. When Ye Xuan hugged and gave birth day and night, Ye Xiaochuan and Gao Yao were starving. Dingdong. Congratulations to the host for giving birth to the child, with a reward lifespan of 20 years. Dingdong. Congratulations to the host family for breaking through 10 members, and reward them with a prefecture level item called Wind and Rain Calling Talisman. As the family power grew stronger, Ye Xuan directly manipulated the entire Great Qin and became the mastermind behind it. Years later, Feilu Novel Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. Chapter 2. Multi-child and multi-blessing system, starting the big plan of having children. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Multi-child and multi-blessing system, starting the big plan of having children. This object is called a telescope and can detect enemies from thousands of miles away. Ye Xuan will introduce the items one by one. Okay. These treasures are rare in my life, especially the map of rivers and mountains for thousands of miles and telescope. I am very pleased with them. Yingzheng patted his hands and smiled, his eyes burning as he looked at these items. The court officials widened their eyes and were deeply moved. These things can be considered divine objects in the eyes of these ancient people. How can one observe thousands of miles of rivers and mountains without leaving home, and how can one observe enemies thousands of miles away without being a divine object? Ye Xuan, what reward do you want? Do you want to become an official in the court, with 1,000 taels of gold, 1,000 hectares of fertile land, or even 100 beauties? I can satisfy you. Yingzheng sat on the throne above, looking down and asking. If possible, the grassroots would like to hold a position of official and semi-official. Ye Xuan expressed his wildness. His purpose of offering gifts is to enter the court. In ancient times, the court was the largest support. As long as he enters the court, he can show off his skills and carry out the plan of giving birth. What are currently available positions? Yingzheng turned his head and asked the eunuch. The eunuch opened a booklet and said, currently, there are still vacant positions for Chang Shirlang. Yingzheng waved his hand and interrupted the eunuch, asking. Ye Xuan, would you be willing to be the chamberlain? Chang Shirlang has little power. Not involving the center of power. It's okay to give rewards arbitrarily. In Yingzheng's view, this position is very suitable for Ye Xuan. Ye Xuan was secretly pleased in his heart. He wants to hold an official position in the court just to rely on the mountains to do things well, and he is willing to hold any position. Of course, if you are idle and have no pressure, it would be even better to fish for it. Chang Shirlang is undoubtedly the best official position in his mind. In the future, you can take on this idle job to fish and receive your salary. Why not act recklessly? Ye Xuan immediately thanked him. I would like to express my gratitude to your Majesty for your kindness. By the way, your Majesty, I have a small request from the grassroots people. I wonder if your Majesty can meet them. Ye Xuan suddenly looked up again, eagerly looking at Yingzheng. Yingzheng frowned. This kid is insatiable. The officials in the court looked at each other. It was the first time they had seen such a brave commoner who dared to make demands to the emperor. It's really rare. Isn't this kid not afraid of death? Yingzheng glanced at the treasure placed on the desk and his furrowed brow relaxed. For the sake of treasure, I promise. What other reward do you want? The commoners have no other requirements, but they have already reached the crown, but the inner courtyard is still vacant. May your majesty reward a few beautiful women to serve. Ye Xuan's words caused Yingzheng to applaud and laugh heartily. Ha ha ha. So it's this kind of request. You have already passed the coronal examination, and it's normal to have such a request. I have allowed it. Yingzheng originally thought that Ye Xuan would gain an inch. I didn't think I just wanted a beauty. Some people are greedy for money, some are greedy for power, and some are lascivious. This is a common occurrence. People with secular desires like this are easier to master. This made Yingzheng very happy. Ye Xuan is lustful, it's easy to handle. Then give him a beauty. As long as you give Ye Xuan the beauty, he can honestly handle things for himself. Ye Xuan is also very happy. Ancient beauties were not raised in a deep boudoir to show off, otherwise they had already married and been hidden in a golden house. It's really rare. The beauty and posture bestowed in the palace are definitely first class. We are only one mansion away from the plan of giving birth. Once the mansion is settled, we can hide our beauty in the golden house. When Ye Xuan was thinking so, Yingzheng's voice rang out again. What other reward do you want? I will reward you together. Ye Xuan shook his head. The grassroots no longer have any other needs. A mansion can be bought with silver. If he makes any further demands to the emperor, it may make him unhappy. Yingzheng Fu waved his hand. I will grant you another mansion. Upon hearing these words, Ye Xuan was moved by Yingzheng's generosity and couldn't help but be overjoyed. Now even the money for the house has been saved. Even more joyful. Golden house, beauty, official position. Power, wealth, beauty. He has everything. Ye Xuan suddenly felt that half of his life had been fulfilled. After dispersing the court, Ye Xuan met the beauty rewarded by Yingzheng. He lifted the curtain of the carriage. A beautiful woman caught the eye one by one. His heart and mind were shaken. Thin powder applied to face, apricot face with peach cheeks, bright eyes and white teeth, icy skin and jade skin, soft and boneless. Each one is a charming and rare beauty. Ye Xuan sighed inwardly. She truly deserves to be a beautiful woman abducted from 6 countries, each with excellent looks. Those artificial beauties in their past lives are simply incomparable to them. If every beauty were to be lost in the entertainment industry in her past life, she could probably become a popular star sought after by millions of people. When they saw Ye Xuan, 2 blushes appeared on their faces. Is such a handsome person the husband they will serve in the future? They thought to themselves. Compared to being rewarded to those who are vulgar and ugly, a handsome young master like Ye Xuan can be called a good match. Young master, I will entrust it to you in the future. The beauty Chi Chao Ye Xuan gave a slight bow. Ye Xuan's face showed a sincere smile from the bottom of his heart. I will give you a stable home and won't let you wander anymore. Ye Xuan led the beauty rewarded by Yingzheng to the mansion where the reward was given. The mansion is magnificent and grand. The main gate is painted with red and vermilion paint, and above it hangs a black golden silk Nanmo plaque. The plaque is inscribed with 2 large characters, Ye Mansion, in a dance of dragons and phoenixes. This is where I will settle down in the future. Ye Xuan looked deeply at this mansion, feeling deeply moved. Returning to ancient times brings many inconveniences. Daily diet, travel, clothing, and other aspects are different. Compared to modern times, it is far behind. Poor people are living in dire straits, and if they encounter any natural or man-made disasters, they will die in minutes. Now that he is backed by the imperial court, at least he will not be troubled by trivial matters such as daily necessities, but he will also face other dangers. However, he finally took root in Daqin. After the servant cleaned everything up, Ye Xuan officially moved in. The sun is setting in the west. Night envelopes this world. The lights of Ye Mansion lit up one by one. Ye Xuan was eager to give it a try. Spring nights are short and bitter. The beauty is still waiting for him to be fortunate, he shouldn't have let the beauty wait so long. So, which beauty should I be fortunate to have? Ye Xuan picked a beautiful woman and went to her room. Creak. The door was pushed open, and the light of the dragon and phoenix candles on the table illuminated the scenery inside. The room was decorated with a bright red and festive atmosphere. There is a big red double happiness sticker on the window, and the phoenix tent and quilt are all big red. The beauty, dressed in a phoenix robe, looked at Ye Xuan standing at the door with autumn water in her eyes. Her face showed shyness and 2 blushes appeared. She lifted the wine glass from the table with a smile, her red lips slightly parted. Young master, tonight is a day of great joy for both of us. Let's have a drink at Heckin Bar. After drinking Hejin wine, Ye Xuan held the beautiful woman and bowed to Duke Zhou. The plan of giving birth has begun. Red is flipped by the waves, the flames of the dragon and phoenix candles keep jumping, and the melted candles keep sliding down the candles bit by bit. Chapter 1. Meeting Qin Huang and offering treasures to the world map at the beginning. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Meeting Qin Huang and offering treasures to the world map at the beginning. The Great Qin Palace. Qin Huang Yingzheng sat high above, with civil and military officials standing on both sides below. The civil and military officials came forward one by one to report. At this moment, the eunuch suddenly approached and whispered a reminder to Yingzheng. Your Majesty, Ye Xuan is already waiting outside the palace. Qin Huang Yingzheng said calmly, let him come in. No. The eunuch hurriedly walked out of the palace, shouting from outside. Xian Ye Xuan's audience. Quickly, the eunuch led Ye Xuan in. Ye Xuan's face was as beautiful as a crown of jade, with sword eyebrows and starry eyes. Wearing a white and pure robe, he also looked imposing. He saw Qin Huang sitting high above him at a glance. Emperor Qin Huang wore 12 imperial crowns and a black dragon robe, sitting high on the throne, emitting a majestic aura. But their faces looked very familiar. Ye Xuan was stunned for a moment. Surprisingly, this Qin Huang looks very similar to the emperor in the TV dramas that Ye Xuan watched in his previous life. Ye Xuan frowned slightly, faintly sensing something was wrong. A strange feeling spreads in my heart. He secretly looked around the court officials. Strange and familiar faces came into view one after another. Sudden constriction of the pupils. No, no, no. Are you joking? Among these court officials, he recognized several of them who were more prominent. Li Si, Meng Tian. They clearly look exactly like Li Si and Meng Tian in the TV series Myth. Ye Xuan's heart was filled with absurd thoughts. Did I travel through the Great Qin in mythology? Ye Xuan was secretly shocked. The heart accelerates to beat with a thump. He thought he had traveled through the historical Qin Dynasty, but he didn't expect to travel through the mythological Qin Dynasty. I don't know what time period I traveled. Where are Ye Xiaochuan and Gao? Ye Xuan's expression was somewhat dazed. He was a traveler who was killed by a mud cart and woke up to arrive in Daqin. I thought that by traveling to the Qin Dynasty in history, I could use the information gap to deceive others. No, it was to assist the ancestor dragon in achieving the great cause of the 1,000 years, to eliminate the Xiongnu, conquer Baiyue, and sail to the west, and so on. Who would have thought that they had come to the Great Qin Dynasty in mythology? With the presence of Ye Xiaochuan and Gao Yao, it is feared that Ye Xuan could deceive other ancient people, but not them. But now it's even better. Ye Xuan was immensely delighted. Compared to the historical Qin Dynasty, he is more familiar with the mythological Qin Dynasty. Almost all the plot inside can be memorized. He is familiar with the plot direction and the ambition and character of the characters, and he is not worried about being tricked by the plot and characters inside. And there are also many beauties inside. Being familiar with the plot can increase Ye Xuan's survival rate, and with the addition of golden fingers, Ye Xuan feels that he can definitely live smoothly in this world. The golden finger was activated by Ye Xuan as soon as he arrived in Daqin. It is called the multi-child multi-blessing system. As the name suggests, it means having more children. As long as there are many children and grandchildren in the family, the greater the influence of the family, the more rewards Ye Xuan will receive. And the system has given some beginner rewards, all of which are items from previous lives. These items from past lives may seem cheap and sparse to modern people, but for ancient people like Qin Shi Huang, they were extremely rare and precious. In ancient times, it was difficult to have multiple sons and blessings without corresponding financial resources and power. Ye Xuan wants to establish a relationship with Qiao Tang. Obtain financial resources and rights. So Ye Xuan wanted to offer a treasure to Emperor Qin Shi Huang, hoping to obtain a position and build his family well. It was precisely because of Ye Xuan's dedication that Emperor Qin Shi Huang summoned him to the palace. What treasures do you have to offer to me? Yingzheng, sitting high above, overlooks the road. The voice is full of authority. Ye Xuan calmly opened one of the boxes at hand and took out a rolled-up world map from inside. This is a map of thousands of miles of rivers and mountains. Your Majesty can browse thousands of miles of rivers and mountains with this object without leaving home. Rulers generally view maps as symbols of power. Extremely valued. After Emperor Qin Shi Huang unified the country, he immediately collected various maps. It means, to control the map of the world and the land of the world. Various maps are managed by the Grand Tutor. Oh. A map of thousands of miles of rivers and mountains. That's a big tone. Is it possible that the map of thousands of miles of rivers and mountains in your hand is even more complete than the map collected by my Grand Tutor? Yingzheng's voice carried a hint of disbelief. Your Majesty, you will know at a glance. Ye Xuan presented it with both hands. The officials of the entire court stared at the 10,000 miles of rivers and mountains map in Ye Xuan's hand, secretly muttering to themselves. Your Majesty has almost collected all the maps in the world. Where did this kid collect the maps from? Most people look like they are watching good movies. The eunuch presented the 10,000 miles of rivers and mountains, and Yingzheng unfolded each picture one by one, gradually turning his indifferent expression into seriousness. A colorful and exquisite world map is revealed, depicting place names, oceans, land, longitude, latitude, and so on. A vast territory that has never been seen before is presented before this eternal emperor, with strange writing on it. Yingzheng furrowed his brow. What does the text above mean? Why is the map colored? Yingzheng displayed a colorful world map in front of the court officials and Ye Xuan. The hearts of all the officials in the court were shaken together. What a delicate picture. In the eyes of these ancient people, modern assembly line mechanical drawing has suddenly become incredibly sophisticated. Look, those bright and magnificent colors. Look at that exquisite craftsmanship. Ye Xuan explained half truthfully and half falsely. Modern writing in Arabic numerals, such as longitude and latitude, can only be said to have originated from a small clan script of the Xiongnu. As for why the map is colored, Ye Xuan explained that different colors represent different places, such as the ocean with the largest blue area, and also introduced various ocean modules on different continents. Manchu officials were amazed. This map surprisingly contains such a vast area that compared to the maps collected by the Grand Tutor, they are all inferior. The world is so vast. Although I have unified the 6 countries, it seems that I am just the tip of the iceberg in this vast territory. It truly deserves the title of 10,000 miles of rivers and mountains. Yingzheng sighed with a complex expression on his face. Suppressing his emotions, Yingzheng asked, "What other treasures do you have to offer to me?" Ye Xuan opened the next box and took out a glass from it. "This is also what I obtained from the Xiongnu people, called a glass cup, which can be used to hold wine." Everyone's gaze was fixed on the glass in Ye Xuan's hand. The crystal-clear quality, with a transparent surface and interior, is even clearer than other glass containers. Sigh. I have never seen such a high-quality glass container before. How on earth was such a clear and crystal-clear glass container made? The officials in the court were low and amazed, discussing incessantly. They looked at the glass in Ye Xuan's hand, their eyes becoming fiery. The 10,000 miles of rivers and mountains is not to be underestimated by them, but there may be a possibility of obtaining a glass cup, provided that Ye Xuan still has a glass cup in his hand. This object is not glass, but glass. Although it is very beautiful, it is fragile. Ye Xuan looked up at Yingzheng and said, "What does your Majesty think the value of this item is?" Yingzheng stroked his beard in admiration. "The price is priceless." Chapter 3. Ye Xiaochuan, who was in danger and enduring suffering. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Ye Xiaochuan, who was in danger but not in danger, and Gao Yao, who suffered greatly on the other side. After crossing the river, Ye Xiaochuan looked bewildered and was pressed onto the execution platform, being regarded as a traitor. Prepared to chop with Uncle Xiangyu, Xiangliang, and others. Am I dreaming? Or is it? Ye Xiaochuan was confused. Puff. The liquor sprayed by the swordsman fell onto the knife, and Ye Xiaochuan, kneeling on the execution table below, was severely affected, with saliva and liquor sprayed all over his face. The prepared swordsman stood next to the rebel party and raised his big knife. "I don't want to die." The traitor's voice, covered in blood stains and disheveled hair, was hoarse and desperate, crying out. Xiangliang, kneeling on the other side of Ye Xiaochuan, blushed and roared. "Brother, why are you crying? Husband, if you die, you'll die. Don't lose face for me." Ye Xiaochuan looked at the two with a bewildered expression on his face. "I thought they were filming." Puzzy. The machete's big knife fell, and the crimson and hot blood splattered across Ye Xiaochuan's face. The huge head rolled down. Ye Xiaochuan's pupils suddenly contracted. A choked-up cry of grief echoed in Xiangliang's ear, "Keep going, brother. Can't it be true murder, right?" Ye Xiaochuan was greatly shocked in his heart. At this moment, the swordsman came to Ye Xiaochuan's side. "Now it's your turn." The axe-wielder took a sip of wine and sprayed it at the big knife, which was covered in blood. He raised his big knife and wanted to chop it off. Ye Xiaochuan's phone suddenly rang. Shocked the crowd on the execution platform. I thought Ye Xiaochuan knew magic and was either a demon or a monster. The swordsman dared not cut it down for a moment. The officials at the execution table urged the swordsman to execute, and in terror, the swordsman pointed to Xiangliang on the other side of Ye Xiaochuan and shouted, "Sir, he is a serious offender. Let's kill him first." The swordsman approached Xiangliang and raised his large knife. Xiangliang closed his eyes. Shoo! A swift arrow shot through the air, making a piercing sound that instantly pierced through the arms of the swordsman. The tremendous force on the arrow lifted the axe-wielder away. Boom! Xiangyu rode to the dust, broke through the wall, and led his subordinates to break into the Dharma field. Xiangliang was grateful to Ye Xiaochuan for delaying and saving his life, and asked Xiangyu to rescue Ye Xiaochuan together from the Dharma field. There was a chaotic battle in the field of Dharma. Xiangyu asked Xiangliang to leave first. He led someone to the rear. Xiang Yu has relied on his immense strength to single-handedly defeat dozens of officers and soldiers. These officers and soldiers are no match for Xiang Yu at all. Xiang Yu rode his horse to Ye Xiaochuan's side and let out a low roar, "Let's go." Grasp Ye Xiaochuan's shoulder and lead him behind. Xiang Yu fled from the Dharma field with his people. The officers and soldiers along the way kept chasing and were knocked down one by Xiang Yu. The archer on the city tower aimed at Xiang Yu and others, shooting arrows. Shoo! 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 Arrow after arrow chased after Xiang Yu and his group who had fled. "Be careful," they fired arrows. Xiang Yu grabbed an arrow shooting towards Ye Xiaochuan behind him as a reminder. Is it a real arrow or a fake arrow? Ye Xiaochuan's face was filled with fear, and his voice trembled as he asked this silly question. The official standing on the city tower shouted, "Shoot arrows. The next round of arrows is ready." Arrows from all directions were shooting towards Ye Xiaochuan, Xiang Yu, and others. Xiang Yu, who was riding a horse and running with Ye Xiaochuan, saw that the situation was not good and swung his sword to stab the storefront next to him. After removing the mask, Xiang Yu swung the huge mask on his sword and wrapped it around the arrows shot from behind. At this moment, a huge door panel was placed in the roadside shop. Xiang Yu's eyes lit up. He threw the door panel to Ye Xiaochuan behind him and asked him to hold it against the arrows. "This board is very heavy." Ye Xiaochuan's face turned red and he stuttered as he shouted. He has some difficulty supporting himself. At this moment, a bamboo pole hanging a cover on the roadside supported the door panel, causing it to fall off. The soldiers on the city tower aimed at Ye Xiaochuan. Shoo! The arrows pierced through the shoulders of Ye Xiaochuan and Xiang Yu in front. But Xiang Yu, Ye Xuan, and others were still being pursued by the officers and soldiers who had temporarily fled. Afterwards, Ye Xuan healed his arrow injuries and saved the two of Xiang Yu's uncles and nephews who were once again pursued by officers and soldiers. It was then that Ye Xuan realized that he had traveled to the Qin Dynasty. Xiang Yu and his group went to Kuaiji to seek refuge with their friends. Although Ye Xuan has encountered many thrills during his travels, he has always been safe and sound. He became a disciple of Xiang Liang and began his peaceful career of practicing martial arts and literature after arriving in Kuaiji. Living like a noble child. Over there is no protagonist aura of Ye Xuan. After crossing over, he had to face unfamiliar worlds and people. He was a black man during the Qin Dynasty. If you want to find a job, others don't even want him. Having no relatives, penniless. Gao Yao can only go to the garbage dump to pick up garbage or eat leftover food from others next to the restaurant. The days of displacement are very difficult to endure. Without a house, one can only sleep in a dilapidated temple and face the cold threat of rainy and snowy weather. In ancient times, there was no quick cure for colds and fever. If you have a cold and fever, you can die. Besides, Gao Yao is still penniless. Even if you have a cold and fever, you don't have the money to go to the hospital for treatment. Gao has to face both natural disasters and man-made disasters. The beggars are all formed in groups. Gao Yao comes and goes alone, becoming the head of the crowd. On this day, Gao will be surrounded. "Hey, kid. Do you know whose territory this is?" A group of beggars dressed in tattered clothes, holding broken bowls and wooden sticks surrounded Gao Yao, their eyes fixed on meat like green-eyed hungry wolves. With a disheveled hair, he bent down and licked his smiling face. "Big brother, I don't know this is your territory anymore. You adults have a large amount, just let me go once." "Let you go?" The beggars sneered. They reached out their hands towards Gao. "What are you going to do?" Gao Yao's expression tightened. "What are you doing? Don't think we didn't see it, that lady just gave you a lot of silver, hand it over." The beggars shouted coldly. Forcing Gao Yao. "Silver, what silver? Big brother, did you misunderstand? Gao Yao attempts to argue insincerely. Bang! A huge fist slammed fiercely into Gao Yao's eye socket, causing him to become dizzy with stars shining on his head. His body shook a few times and he fell into a corner. Gao Yao bared his teeth and covered his eyes, feeling inexplicably sad and angry. What are you going to do? Is there any other way? Huang Fa. The beggars laughed and said, I am the king. If you don't hand it over again, don't blame us for being impolite. Gao Yao naturally refuses. These silver coins are equivalent to his life. If he had no silver, he would probably starve to death in this place. The beggars were angry and beat Gao Yao hard, robbing him of his silver and not even leaving his clothes. Gao Yao, covered in wounds and filth, fell to the ground, tears streaming down his face, and his heart was filled with despair. What a terrible place is this! What a terrible place! He is eager to find Ye Xuan and return to modern times. In modern times, he has at least relatives who can provide him with worry-free food and clothing, as well as a place to live. However, here, he lacks food and clothing, doesn't even have a place to live, and is subject to bullying. Perhaps God pitied Gao Yao, who showed his culinary skills and was favored by restaurant owners, becoming a cook. His days have only improved slightly now. P.S. These data are the biggest driving force for me to code words. My hand speed is very fast, basically over 18,000 yuan per day, and I have already saved 10 chapters of manuscripts. Starting with a fixed update of 5 chapters per day, currently there are no fresh flowers. As long as there are 300 fresh flowers, add another chapter immediately. As long as there is a reward. Little brother, add another chapter immediately. As long as there are 200 review tickets, I will immediately add another chapter, I will never break my promise. As long as there is data, I will immediately explode and update. The first piece of paper in Chapter 5 is born horizontally, and the bookshop is accurate. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. The first piece of paper is born horizontally, and the bookstore is ready to open. Ye Xuan bought a rudimentary workshop near the water source as a paper workshop and placed the craftsman there. With all the raw materials gathered, Ye Xuan's research on how to make paper began. Although he knows the general paper making methods and steps, there are still some details that need to be practiced. Firstly, dry the bark in the sun. After several days of scorching sun, the moisture in the bark was dried. Then soak the bark in live water for about a week to fully soften it. Boil the softened bark and ash in a large pot with water. Under the big pot was burning hot red charcoal, and the water inside quickly boiled. Gudong gudong. The steaming hot air rushed towards Ye Xuan, who was stirring the bark and ash of the trees. Ye Xuan was sweating profusely from the steam. The craftsmen and servants looked puzzled. The bark is both sun-dried and cooked, it's really strange. Do you want to cook tree bark to eat? The craftsmen looked at Ye Xuan as if they were looking at a witch cooking a cauldron. His eyes were full of strangeness and novelty. They felt that Ye Xuan's attempt to make the light and thin paper, that he described as easy to transcribe and carry like silk cloth, was entirely a joke. What kind of useless paper can this method really make? Just endure like this, call me after 6 hours. Ye Xuan instructed. He estimated that after boiling for 12 hours, he should be able to degum the plant fibers. Yes. Servants and craftsmen responded one after another. 12 hours later. Ye Xuan returned to check the condition of the bark, which had mostly softened and degummed. He washed the bark stained with plant ash, and the bark appeared pale white. Then he began to strike the bark with a sledgehammer. After tapping to dry any excess water, cut into small pieces. Use a giant hammer to continue pounding and cutting the bark into small pieces, scattering the fibers of the bark. Bang bang bang. Continuously tapping. A dull sound came. Hundreds of times later, Ye Xuan's hands became sore and soft. He wiped the sweat off his forehead and glanced at the bark of the tree. Not enough. We still need to continue. Let's do it. The craftsman stepped forward to take over this labor. Ye Xuan handed over the giant hammer in his hand. The hammering project is continuing. Thousands of times later. Ye Xuan asked the craftsman to stop beating and twisted the bark with his fingers. It should be possible. Next is plagiarism. Ye Xuan engraved the previous detailed steps on the bamboo slips, and then continued with the next steps. He put the broken bark into a large wooden basin, stirred it up, and then poured in the green ginger cotyledon juice. Mix the two well, almost blending with water, like a thick slurry. Ye Xuan used a bamboo mat to scoop out the pulp. A thin layer of pulp covered the bamboo mat. Success. Next, let's wait for the sun to dry. The sun shone directly on the thin layer of pulp, and soon this layer of pulp was dried and solidified, with some impurities, making it a slightly rough paper with a dark yellow color. Craftsmen and servants gathered around Ye Xuan, looking at the paper in his hand and marveling. This is paper. I didn't expect to make this thing after a series of boiling, it's really amazing. The crowd was discussing. Ye Xuan's face also wore a hint of joy. Finally made. This is probably the first piece of paper in the world. In the future, you can use paper to transcribe book texts or record texts. Bring me my pen. Ye Xuan instructed the servant. The servant quickly brought the brush. The brush of the Qin Dynasty was composed of bamboo tubes and animal hair. One end of the pen holder is carved into a cavity shape, and the animal hair is made into a solid pen head and incorporated into the cavity. The pen holder and capillary are of equal length. Place the brush inside the pen holder, and then stick it firmly with glue. This is the Qin brush. Ye Xuan dipped his brush in ink and then wrote on the paper. Craftsmen and servants stared wide-eyed. The pitch-black ink followed the brush beast's hair and gradually adhered to the paper. Horizontal and vertical strokes. The word paper appears. The craftsmen and servants were full of surprises. Can really record text. In this way, as Ye Xuan said, one can use paper to record, transcribe, and extract texts. In the future, there will be no need to use heavy bamboo or wooden slips. You should know that the daily memorials of Emperor Qin Shi Huang can reach 120 stones, which is over 30 pounds. If the memorial is written on paper, the weight of the memorial will be greatly reduced. At least the palace people don't have to work so hard to carry the memorial. Ye Xuan engraved all the manufacturing steps and some details onto the wooden slips, and then began to have craftsmen mass-produce paper. Paper is quickly produced. Ye Xuan bound these papers together into a book. A wordless book has taken shape. Then, he had someone specifically transcribe the text from the classics. Made into the earliest books. The densely packed and orderly characters covered the paper. Ye Xuan glanced and nodded. In the future, there will be no need to hold on to that heavy bamboo slip and read the text. Paper books are easy to read, spread, write, and carry, and are relatively inexpensive. Ye Xuan has started planning to open a bookstore. If I open a bookstore, it should be the world's first bookstore, right? He muttered to himself. The purpose of opening a bookstore is to widely disseminate written knowledge for children from humble backgrounds and those who cannot afford books to read. The main focus is to enhance reputation and influence. Of course, reading books is not free. After all, if the books are old or damaged, it is also a part of the cost, and in addition, there is a need for store staff to manage these books. Free is impossible. However, the price of reading books is several times, or even tens of times, lower than the price of purchasing books. Readers can copy, extract, and write the content of books, which is already quite cheap for them and greatly convenient for them. In ancient times, it was extremely rare to spend a small amount of money reading books. After all, ancient books were very expensive, and good books fell into the hands of wealthy families and upper-class aristocrats. Even copied books are difficult for ordinary readers to obtain, let alone read. If Ye Xuan opened a bookstore, it would greatly facilitate readers. And Ye Xuan can also earn profits, maintain in-store revenue, and make up for the manpower and material costs of papermaking. Win-win for both parties. Why not do it? With Ye Xuan's current financial and material resources, if he were to engage in a loss-making business and make free paper copies of books for people to watch, he might soon go bankrupt. As for expanding the scale, it is even more impossible with Ye Xuan's current financial and material resources. Ye Xuan estimated the cost of opening a bookstore, hiring clerks and managers, transcribing and excerpting books into books, and so on. The store manager can choose a trusted servant within the mansion, which is more reassuring. Shop assistants can hire reliable civilians at will. The address chosen for the store should be in a bustling area with many readers. Quickly, Ye Xuan prepared for a series of store openings. I bought a shop in the bustling market. The number of transcribed and excerpted books is over 100. The selection of store manager and staff has been completed. The next step is to open a store. Chapter 4. Enhancing Family Influence, Papermaking. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Enhancing Family Influence, Papermaking. The position of Chang Shilang is very vacant. Ye Xuan hardly needs to do anything. It can be said that feeling the fish for a while is satisfying, and feeling the fish all the time is always satisfying. After work, Ye Xuan returned to Yi Mansion and began his child-making career again. He wants to earn system rewards by increasing his offspring. Ye Xuan stated that simply for the sake of rewards, he would settle down in Daqin after receiving rewards. There is absolutely no selfishness. It's not because I'm not homesick. Beauty, I'm here. Ye Xuan issued a proclamation like a lascivious person and pushed open the door of the beauty's room. The red candle sways. The dim yellow candlelight illuminated the room. The beauty sat on the bed, stirring her handkerchiefs with both hands and a shy expression on her face. She called out coquettishly, "Husband." The red candle flickered brightly and extinguished. Spring nights are short and bitter. One night after another. The red candle burned out. Ye Xuan is like this almost every night. If it continues like this, the cow won't be able to withstand it. Ye Xuan covered his waist, feeling that he needed to make up for it properly. Soak goji berries in a cup. The nourishing yin and tonifying yang soup cannot be omitted. After Ye Xuan's hard work, his hard work finally paid off. Ye Xuan looked at the 4 concubines in front of him with satisfaction. These people are already pregnant. Thanks to working overtime night and night, my efforts have finally paid off. Now we just need to wait for the child to be born. Ye Xuan thought to himself. As long as the child is born, they can receive system rewards. I don't know what reward I can get either. Ye Xuan is looking forward to it. Although not all products produced by the system are exquisite, for ancient people, they were treasures. Things like world maps, telescopes, etc. that were previously rewarded by system beginners. These items are sparse and ordinary for modern people. But for ancient people who have never seen these items, they can be said to be peerless treasures. Like a world map, it may not be useful for modern people, but it can broaden the horizons of ancient people. In ancient times, when transportation was not convenient, it took several days and months to cross provinces, so the vision of ancient people was not as broad as that of modern people. Perhaps they didn't even know that besides the Great Qin, Xiongnu, Baiyu, and surrounding countries, there were other races and countries with different skin colors. A detailed world map opens up the eyes of ancient people, allowing them to clearly recognize the entire world. This is also why Yingxing values the world map so much. As for telescopes, as long as Yingzheng and others use them for military purposes, they can detect the enemy's situation and win a decisive victory thousands of miles away. It can be said to be a military weapon. It will take several months to give birth to offspring, and this period cannot be wasted. To obtain system rewards, one is to increase offspring, and the other is to expand the family's influence. It takes time to give birth to offspring. Ye Xuan began to ponder how to utilize modern knowledge and this information gap to expand the family's influence. Out of the corner of his eye, he caught a glimpse of the bamboo slips on the table, and Ye Xuan's mind suddenly flashed with a flash of inspiration. Got it. How come I only remembered now? Papermaking. Paper involves various aspects of modern life, such as books, paper cups, paper boxes, toilet paper, cardboard, and so on. Modern civilization is almost inseparable from paper. In this era, Ye Xuan felt that the worst aspect was the lack of paper. Wiping hands and nose requires the use of fabric, and the fabric handkerchief needs to be used multiple times. To use the toilet, it is necessary to use toilet chips, which are processed smooth wooden or bamboo strips. Ye Xuan felt very uncomfortable. But it was impossible for the Qin Dynasty to have paper. After all, papermaking was only developed during the Western Han Dynasty. Cai Luan, the developer of papermaking, is estimated to have not yet been born. Due to the lack of paper, the Qin Dynasty still used bamboo and wooden slips to compile and carve characters. This is very inconvenient for Ye Xuan. The raw materials for papermaking are bark, hemp head, and ash water from plants and trees. These items can be easily found even in this era. Making paper is relatively easy and convenient. If paper were developed, it would probably be a change of the times, bringing a series of changes to the people of the Qin Dynasty. Writing no longer needs to be engraved on bamboo or wooden slips, wiping dirt no longer requires the use of handkerchiefs, and there is no need to use toilet chips when using the toilet. This is undoubtedly equivalent to a tremendous transformation from the steam age to the electrical age, which could bring great convenience to the people of the Qin Dynasty. Moreover, if Ye Xuan could make paper, it would expand the influence of the family. It's up to you, papermaking. After Ye Xuan decided to make paper, he began to arrange it. Purchase raw materials for papermaking. Purchase slave craftsmen. When purchasing raw materials, choose bark from bark trees instead of hemp. This is because the protein, lignin, and pectin contained in tree bark are much higher than those in hemp. It can significantly increase the yield of paper. The downside is that degumming and pulping are more difficult. Choose plant ash water instead of lime water. Grass and wood ash water has a high alkalinity, which can improve the quality of pulp. In addition to purchasing raw materials for manufacturing paper, some auxiliary tools are also needed. Raw material separation tool. Beating tools. A tool for screening debris and undissociated fiber bundles. Paper scraper, bamboo mat. Ye Xuan instructed his servants to purchase both raw materials and slave craftsmen. Soon, dozens of slave craftsmen appeared in front of Ye Xuan. These slave craftsmen were dressed in coarse linen clothes, with their heads down, afraid to look up and offend Ye Xuan. Master, as you instructed, the craftsmen have all bought it. Among these people, there are carpenters, stonemasons, blacksmiths, bricklayers, strippers, and shavers, everything they have. The servant pointed to this group of people and introduced them. Ye Xuan nodded and said, "Do you know why I came looking for you? What do adults want us to do? I am a carpenter, skilled in making and carving various colors of wooden furniture. No matter what kind of wooden furniture adults want to make, I can complete it." The older craftsman spoke respectfully. Furniture. Ye Xuan shook his head. I did not ask you to make furniture, nor did I ask you to make stone tools, nor did I ask you to make bamboo mats. I want you to make paper. The craftsman's eyes widened, revealing confusion. Paper. What is that thing? The people of the Qin Dynasty had no contact with paper at all, and had never seen paper before, so they naturally did not know what paper was. They felt uneasy inside. I don't know how to make paper, I don't know how to make it, I have never made it before. What should we do? The older craftsman hesitated and said, Sir, what kind of paper are you talking about? We have never made it before. This. A clever woman cannot cook without rice. Yes, sir. We have made iron, cut wood, and woven bamboo mats, but we have never made paper. Other craftsmen also spoke up one after another. Ye Xuan glanced at the restless crowd. I will inform you of the approach. You can follow the steps I said. Chapter 8. The grand officials of the Imperial Court gather at the bookstore and marvel at the paper. You are listening at novelFull.audio. Chapter 8. The grand officials of the Imperial Court gather at a bookstore and marvel at the magic of paper. Li Si mansion. After hearing the news, Li Si pondered for a moment and ordered the servant to go buy some books. Here it is. The servant responded and left the mansion, heading straight to Ye Ji bookstore. He paid and went straight into the bookstore, took a book at will, and walked back to the counter. How much silver is this book? The attitude of the shop assistant is neither humble nor overbearing. Sorry, the bookstore currently only offers reading at the bookstore and does not sell books at the moment. The servant was stunned. He didn't know, because the number of books at Ye Ji bookstore was too small, Ye Xuan was temporarily not prepared to sell them to the public. No, what's going on at Ye Ji bookstore? I have silver, why don't you sell it? The shop assistant still maintains a calm and unassuming attitude. I'm very sorry, this bookstore is temporarily selling books to the outside world. The servant was a bit annoyed. This is what our master asked me to buy. How can I deal with my master if you don't sell? Can you please accommodate me a bit? Seeing the clerk's soft and hard attitude of not eating, the servant thought for a moment and lowered his voice, saying, I am from the Prime Minister's office, can I be more accommodating? The shop assistant did not make any concessions. This argument has made the originally quiet bookstore noisy. Readers looked at the servant Li Si next to the counter, furrowing their brows slightly, and their expressions seemed very unhappy. Li Si's servant suffered from eating and his face turned ugly. He dare not cause trouble either. After all, a bunch of readers are staring at it. Moreover, the other party is Chang Shirlang. Although the official position is not large, at least it is an official. More importantly, he came out on behalf of the master. If we make a big fuss here and lose the face of our master, I'm afraid he will have to take responsibility for his small life. The servant returned to the mansion with a stern expression and informed him of the matter. Li Si remained silent for a while. Not even his name works. He swung his sleeves and stood up. Since that's the case, I'll personally go and see what's really remarkable about this Ye Ji bookstore. The leaves in the courtyard swayed and rustled. Inside the room, Wei Liao sat cross-legged on a cattail, holding a bamboo slip and sipping tea. Good tea. Wei Liao let out a sigh. At this moment, the servant walked in and bowed down to report. Master, there is some movement on the side of the Prime Minister's mansion. Oh. Ye Ji bookstore, Wei Liao frowned. His tone is very affirmative. The servant flattered and said, the master is extremely intelligent. He guessed it right. Their carriage and horses are indeed heading towards the bookstore. No, Li Si is not such an impatient person. It's really strange. Wei Liao is a bit strange. The books of the small Tinjieji bookstore can only be viewed at the bookstore and cannot be taken out, let alone sold to the public. Therefore, they had a quarrel with the servants of the Prime Minister's office who wanted to borrow books. Wei Liao smiled. I see, it must have been Li Si's servant who informed him of his identity, and the other party refused to compromise, so Li Si personally went there. He put down the book in his hand and stood up. Prepare the car and go to Ye Ji Bookstore. Let's also join in the fun. He also wants to see what kind of books are bound together on paper. Wei Liao stepped out of the mansion, boarded the carriage, and headed to the bookstore. Apart from Li Si and Wei Liao, other important officials of the court in Xianyang City also wanted to visit this Ye Ji bookstore. The first bookstore in history. They are very curious. What kind of bookstores look like, and what kind of books made of paper are they? Are they really as light as those readers say? But due to face saving, they refuse to show their faces. So I sent the servants to buy books. Their fate was similar to that of Li Si's servant, both of whom were rejected. Just a little chamberlain, he feels like he's rejecting me. After being rejected, they were extremely angry. Master, the one from the Prime Minister's office has also been rejected. The servant informed. This statement made the court officials feel much more comfortable. Even that one was rejected, let alone them. But they still have a knot in their hearts. A former businessman, a guy who only obtained little chamberlain by donating treasures. How dare he? What exactly is the book on the side of paper synthesis? Seeking but not being able to, makes their hearts itch, like an invisible feather tickling their itch, wanting but not getting. Master, you can personally go to the bookstore, won't you also be able to see the books? The servant reminded. The high-ranking official of the court glared at the servant and said, what do you know? That bookstore is open in the market. What is my identity and where is it? Do you want me to go to that kind of commoner's place? The servant remained silent. For a long time, the servant chatted and said, Master, but the one from the Prime Minister's mansion has personally gone. The court officials widened their eyes. Why didn't you say such important news earlier? He has already gone, so I won't lose face if I go. Prepare the car. Hurry up and prepare the car. Carriages carrying high-ranking officials from the court rushed towards the direction of the Ye Ji bookstore, and the wide roads became congested with the appearance of these carriages. The common people on the road retreated to both sides of the road, curiously watching the battle and discussing it. So many wealthy people are traveling, what happened? The second floor of the restaurant. Meng Tian heard a sudden increase in noise below. He turned his head and looked down, only to see carriages passing by. These carriages look exceptionally familiar. Isn't this the carriage of the Wei Liao family? The carriage of the Wang Ben family is also here. That's the carriage of the imperial censor Feng Jie. Where are they going with all this fanfare? Meng Tian looked at the direction of their carriage's departure, and 4 words came to her mind. Ye Ji Bookstore. Intuition told him that they were going there. Meng Tian patted her buttocks and stood up, let's go and take a look too. Stepping out of the restaurant, the dazzling sunlight rushed down, and Meng Tian raised her hand to block the sunlight, squinting her eyes. Ye Ji Bookstore, I would like to see what the newly appointed Chang Shilang has produced. The entrance of Ye Ji Bookstore was filled with carriages. A group of high-ranking officials of the court stood at the door, staring big and small. Are you here too? Aren't you too? Li Si looked around, his face calm, and the corner of his eye met Meng Tian and others, who exchanged a smile. It seems that they all want to join the fun and see what this bookstore looks like. Prime Minister, please deliver. Meng Tian made a gesture of invitation. Li Si walked in, and the others followed closely behind. The shop assistant is in great fear and anxiety. The readers inside the shop never expected so many court officials to patronize this small bookstore. Li Si looked around the bookstore. Inside the bookstore, there are rows of neatly arranged bookshelves, which are filled with books on the so-called paper synthesis side. These books are not big and do not look heavy. On the outside of the bookstore, there are rows of long tables and chairs for readers to sit and read books. The arrangement is novel and appropriate. Li Si thought to himself. Meng Tian and others were also surprised to see such a novel layout and tidy bookstore for the first time. They went to the counter to pay the fee, entered the bookstore, and walked towards the bookshelf. Li Si picked up one of the books. Very light. Very light. The weight is less than 1/10 of that of wooden slips. Chapter 9. Paper shocks Emperor Qin Shi Huang and books popularize. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Paper shocks Emperor Qin Shi Huang and books popularize the Great Qin Dynasty. Ye Ji Bookstore. Rows of books were neatly arranged on the bookshelf, and Li Si weighed the books in his hand. His eyes were very complicated. I didn't expect there to be such a light and thin document in the world. It's really light. Meng Tian, standing beside Li Si, weighed the book in her hand. Upon hearing Meng Tian's exclamation, Li Si also strongly agreed. He flipped through the pages of the book, which were densely packed with words. 2 fingers picked up one of the pages of paper and rubbed it. Very thin. It is dozens of times thinner than bamboo slips. Li Si's eyes became serious. He flipped through the article, and then calculated how many stones would be needed to gradually record it using bamboo slips. He came up with a very terrifying answer. If we were to gradually record this article, it would probably take about a stone of bamboo slips to fully record it. 1 stone is equivalent to 120 pounds. However, now a paper-bound book can easily accommodate this article, and the weight of this book is probably only about 1 pound. The Prime Minister also thinks this thing is magical, right? On the other side, a sound rang out. Li Si turned his head and saw that it was Wei Liao. Wei Liao flipped through a book in his hand, with a smile on his face. A book can hold articles recorded on bamboo slips weighing about 1 stone. Paper is really something that captures the essence of heaven and earth. Li Si remained silent. He thought that Ye Xuan was just a small official who donated treasures and didn't need to worry about it, but to his surprise, Ye Xuan managed to create paper and bookstores. Ye Xuan easily wooed the scholars in Xianyang. If the bookstores were to spread throughout the Great Qin, he might be able to woo all the scholars in the Great Qin. What kind of terror is this? Even the young master Feilu, who is deeply loved by scholars, does not possess such abilities. The exclamation of other court officials came in my ears. Li Si's heart sank with a sigh of relief. I'm afraid paper and bookstores will be introduced to the ears of Emperor Shi. The next day. Above the main hall. Qin Shi Huang wore 12 imperial crowns on his head and a black crown, with his hand supporting his head and looking down. If there is something to attend to, leave the court. I have something to report to your majesty. I also have something to report. The courtiers below spoke one after another. Qin Shi Huang was stunned for a moment. I haven't seen them so enthusiastic before. Why is this person different from others? Emperor Qin Shi Huang nodded at one of the important officials of the court and said, Your Highness, please speak up. Your Majesty, Minister Ye Xuan created paper, which is as light and thin as silk, and has a function similar to bamboo slips and wooden slips. It can record words, but its weight is only 1/10 of that of bamboo slips and wooden slips, no, 1%. Often, dozens of pages of paper can record the words recorded on bamboo slips weighing about 1 stone. Oh! Is it really as magical as Iching said? Qin Shi Huang became curious. Your Majesty, we saw it with our own eyes yesterday and dare not conceal it, Your Majesty. Another important official continued, Minister Ye Xuan also opened a bookstore in the bustling city called Ye Ji Bookstore, which is full of paper, composite books. Xianyang students and ordinary people only need a few Wen to read them. Li Si listened as they eagerly informed the first emperor. In my heart, it is indeed so. He knew that things would come to this point. Therefore, he took a step forward and recited. Your Majesty, the popularization of paper and books will undoubtedly bring development to our Great Qin, benefit all the students of Great Qin, bring convenience to them, and relieve them of the burden of heavy bamboo and wooden slips. I hope Your Majesty can promote paper and books to all students in the Great Qin Dynasty. Li Si bowed deeply to Emperor Qin Shi Huang. At this moment, all the courtiers in the main hall also bowed to Emperor Qin Shi Huang and said in unison, I hope Your Majesty can promote paper and books to all students in the Great Qin Dynasty. The sound was deafening and reverberating in the main hall for a long time. Let Ye Xuan bring books to the audience. Emperor Qin Shi Huang ordered the eunuchs around him. His curiosity grew even stronger. If one or two people praise the magic of paper and books, he doesn't think so, but surprisingly, all the ministers praise them so. Even Lise is like this. I believe that paper must have its magical qualities. The eunuch hastily carried an edict to the Yi mansion. Yi Fu. Your Majesty has instructed Ye Xuan to quickly bring books into the palace and face the Holy Spirit, there must be no mistakes. The eunuch spoke in a sharp voice. After receiving the order, Ye Xuan hurriedly returned to the study and picked up a book to follow the eunuch into the palace. Xian Ye Xuan's audience. Xian Ye Xuan's audience. With the sound of the call, Ye Xuan once again stepped into Xianyang Palace. The Xianyang Palace remains as magnificent as ever, with Emperor Qin Shi Huang sitting on a dragon chair, looking down high, exuding an indescribable majesty. Li Si secretly glanced at Ye Xuan. He thought it was impossible for Ye Xuan to step into this place again, but he firmly slapped his face. And he fought so fast. Compared to the previous time, Ye Xuan has not changed much. Still so handsome and extraordinary. It's just that the moon-white robe on my body is more delicate and has a better texture than the previous one. The other courtiers in the court were also particularly complex. It is truly unbelievable that a businessman who changed his official position by offering gifts can once again enter the Xianyang Palace as a face saint. And the official merchants they once looked down upon were able to invent such remarkable items. It's really a bit eye-catching. Ye Xuan presented the books. The eunuch took it and presented it to Emperor Qin Shi Huang. Qin Shi Huang took over the book. The expected heaviness did not come. Ha! This book is so light. Qin Shi Huang felt a bit unbelievable in his heart. He opened the book. Each page is densely packed but neatly organized with words recorded on both sides of the book. Qin Shi Huang checked the thickness of each page of paper. Thin as silk. Qin Shi Huang's pupils slightly contracted. My heart was particularly shaken. If all the characters on wooden slips in the world were recorded in books made of paper, it would save a lot of wood and manpower. And those weights may decrease by tens, hundreds of times. No wonder both civil and military officials in the Manchu dynasty praised the paper developed by Ye Xuan. Seeing it today, it truly lived up to its reputation. Qin Shi Huang praised it and then asked, Ye Xuan, can this kind of book be popularized? Your Majesty, this type of book can be popularized. Ye Xuan replied. Everyone was overjoyed. Meng Tian's face showed a heartfelt smile. If all the students of the Great Qin could use such light and thin books, they probably wouldn't have to suffer so much. Li Si couldn't help but feel lucky for all the students of the Great Qin. If we had such a light and thin object to record words in the past, we probably wouldn't have had to bear such heavy bamboo and wooden slips, nor would we have had to seal the words in one book after another of bamboo and wooden slips. They could already imagine all the wooden and bamboo slips being replaced with books, and could imagine students holding books instead of wooden or bamboo slips. It is truly the blessing of all students, the blessing of the Great Qin, and the blessing of the world. Chapter 10. Huffling Emperor Qin Shi Huang and collaborating on papermaking. You are listening at novelFull.audio. Chapter 10. Huffling Emperor Qin Shi Huang and collaborating on papermaking. Qin Shi Huang's face was also filled with joy. Very good, very good. From now on, as a student of the Great Qin Dynasty, I no longer need to use heavy bamboo slips. Ye Xuan, what kind of help is needed for popularization? Feel free to mention it, I will fully satisfy you. I can help you with money, manpower, and paper raw materials. You just need to popularize books in the Great Qin Dynasty. Ye Xuan secretly looked at Qin Shi Huang, who was overjoyed above, and turned his eyes. I came up with a plan. This is the Qin in film and television dramas. Instead of the historical Qin dynasty. The one sitting above is not the renowned and talented emperor of all time in history. But rather the incompetent Qin Shi Huang in the myth. It can even be secretly turned green by Ye Xuan. This kind of Qin Shi Huang may not necessarily be fooled. Cooperation. After all, if he were to take over the paper and book business all by himself, I'm afraid these court officials would be envious and eager. Even Emperor Qin Shi Huang, in the face of such huge interests, could not help but be moved. Not wanting to take such a huge risk, Ye Xuan spoke up. Your Majesty, I have a proposal. It is impossible to popularize books in the Great Qin Dynasty solely by serving as a minister, even with the financial, human, and material resources that your Majesty has provided. Qin Shi Huang, who was sitting on a high dragon chair, frowned slightly and seemed somewhat displeased. Your Majesty, calm down. Although there is a way to popularize this type of paper book, it requires the cooperation of various officials in the civil and military fields of the Great Qin Dynasty. Ye Xuan was neither humble nor arrogant, without any fear. Li Si, who lowered his head, secretly glanced at Ye Xuan. What is this kid up to? What does he want to do? Li Si is a bit confused about what Ye Xuan wants to do. The same goes for others. Meng Tian was stunned for a moment, then his eyebrows furrowed into a river. Collaboration. How to cooperate. Everyone didn't understand the meaning behind Ye Xuan's words. Including Qin Shi Huang. Ye Xuan, what kind of cooperation method is this collaboration you're talking about? Qin Shi Huang inquired. Your Majesty, what I mean is to cooperate with civil and military officials in doing business, including you, Your Majesty. Let's do the papermaking business together. With the help of everyone and the imperial family, I believe this type of book will soon be popularized in the Great Qin Dynasty. The papermaking business is entirely controlled by the royal family ministers, and I am responsible for providing papermaking technology. I only take 3 layers of profits from it, and the rest belongs to Your Majesty. Your Majesty, it is entirely up to you to decide how to allocate it. Ye Xuan spoke wildly. The meaning is that he is only responsible for providing technology, with human, financial, and material resources provided by Emperor Qin Shi Huang and all ministers. Equivalent to Ye Xuan being a hands-off shopkeeper. Do nothing and still have money to claim. Among them, Ye Xuan said he only takes 3 layers of profit. The profit margin of the 3rd tier appears to be very low. Actually, there are already many. The 7 layers of profits obtained by Emperor Qin Shi Huang need to be distributed to hundreds of officials in the court. If Emperor Qin Shi Huang wanted to be indiscriminate. Naturally, it is also possible. Anyway, it's not Ye Xuan who will offend these people. As for whether Qin Shi Huang gave these people bones to eat or soup to drink, it's not up to Ye Xuan. Everyone listened with confusion on their faces. How could this kind of gameplay still exist? It's quite novel. They have never seen it before. Ye Xuan was willing to give them benefits and even took out the big head. Most ministers looked at Ye Xuan and felt that he was indeed an extraordinary person. The entire Qin dynasty requires papermaking. It can be imagined that papermaking can bring huge benefits. That interest must be based on billions of silver. But Ye Xuan was actually willing to hand over most of the profits. He knows too much about officialdom. At a young age, I actually understand the principle of equal benefits. If they will definitely not give up this huge benefit. Wealth and silk move people's hearts. People die for wealth, birds die for food. Huang pondered for a while, looking down at the silent courtiers below. What do you mean, dear gentleman? These courtiers don't know what they're thinking, anyway he's tempted. 7 layers of profit in papermaking. He can divide these people as much as he wants. Even if he doesn't distinguish, the courtiers dare not speak up if they have any objections, let alone speak up. Why not accept such a good business? Meng Tian instinctively felt that it was not appropriate. But I don't know what's wrong. He furrowed his brow tightly. Wei Liao's mouth showed a smile on the corner of his mouth. 7 layers of profits were distributed to Emperor Qin Huang, leaving only 3 layers of profits. What a good one with only 3 layers left. If these courtiers were evenly divided, they might not even have a profit of half a layer. This person is really cunning. I don't want to be the leader of all the arrows. Make money quietly. Emperor Qin Huang seemed very satisfied, and naturally, those who were courtiers could not object. This is Yang Mao. They dare not and cannot resist even if they want to. Li Si took a deep look at Ye Xuan and then withdrew his gaze. This kid is willing to give up such a big benefit. There must be something inappropriate inside. What exactly is it? Li Si pondered for a while, a bit puzzled as to where Ye Xuan had tampered. He doesn't think Ye Xuan really wants to give up the majority of the profits. Suddenly, a spiritual light flashed through his mind, and he finally understood Ye Xuan's plan. This son is so calculating. Everyone remained silent, and Qin Huang became somewhat impatient. What does it mean for all the beloved ministers to remain silent? Some of the ministers below are looking at Li Si, while others are looking at Meng Tian and others. These people have not made a statement, and they dare not. Although Li Si felt it was inappropriate, the benefits of papermaking were enormous. I can definitely make a lot of money. He said, I agree to cooperate. I also agree. Meng Tian saw the old fox agreeing and naturally spoke up. The old fox thinks there's no problem. There must be no problem. The courtiers saw these 2 people expressing their opinions and also expressed their opinions one after another. I also agree. I support your proposal. Emperor Qin Huang's gaze was only on some ministers ahead. He began to think about how to distribute these profits. Although he can also refuse to give, it would be too cold for the hearts of these courtiers not to give. How exactly should we divide it? Qin Huang had a faint headache. This is a troublesome task. Ye Xuan almost burst into laughter when he saw his courtiers expressing their opinions. He gritted his lower lip and suppressed a smile. As long as we provide our own papermaking technology, there will be no need to interfere or work in the papermaking business in the future, and we will wait for the profits from the 3rd tier to be delivered to our doorstep. It's like lying down to make money. Ye Xuan's actions tied the entire Great Qin Dynasty to his own worship. 1 prosperity, 1 loss, 1 loss. Chapter 11. Famous Xianyang, rewarding ground-level props. You are listening at novelFull.audio. Chapter 11. Famous Xianyang, rewarding ground-level props with wind and rain calling talismans. Ye Xuan provided papermaking technology and completely abandoned this business to Qin Huang and others. I became a hands-off shopkeeper myself. Ye Xuan is not worried about whether they will do well. This group of people has power and influence, and is not lacking in material, human, and financial resources. As long as they want to do a business seriously, it will definitely become popular. Moreover, the papermaking business is a top-tier business in Daqin. Even a pig standing on the wind can make money. As for how Qin Huang distributed the 7 layers of profits, this is not something Ye Xuan should worry about. Xianyang Palace, Main Hall. Emperor Qin Shi Huang, wearing a 12-meon crown and a black crown, sat on a magnificent golden dragon chair. The golden 9-clawed golden dragon on the wall behind him emitted a golden light, as if bathing in a golden glow. Ladies and gentlemen, who is willing to participate in this business? Emperor Qin Shi Huang's words made the courtiers below the main hall restless. The important minister standing in front had a fiery gaze. They all stood up one after another. I am willing to worry for your majesty. The words fell. They looked at their colleagues and themselves grabbing money, their eyes widened and they didn't let anyone down or obey anyone. Li Si held the Chow Hu, and the old god was present. Meng Tian remained calm and composed. He is an insider. If others can share the cup from it, then naturally they cannot help but cover the house. He believes that His Majesty will not forget their loyal Meng family. Wei Liao smiled at the corners of his mouth as he watched the greedy faces of the officials in the court blushing for financial gain. Wealth and silk move people's hearts. No wonder they are so excited in the face of such great benefits. The profits of the 7th floor are all in the hands of Qin Shi Huang, and even if Qin Shi Huang points out some benefits through his fingers, it is enough to make them prosperous and prosperous. Qin Shi Huang looked at the noisy group of officials below, his head tingling slightly. Rubbed the temples. His gaze fell on Li Si and others at the forefront. This business cannot be left behind by the 3 officials and 9 ministers. Suddenly, Emperor Qin Shi Huang came up with a good idea. He spoke up. Li Si, Meng Tian, Wei Liao and others have been ordered to give you 3 layers of profit, and you have full authority to handle the papermaking business. Man Chaoan and Wu were stunned. Wei Liao's mouth twitched. Isn't this the same trick as Ye Xuan? But 3 layers of profit. Ye Xuan has 3 layers of profit, so he doesn't have to share it with others. And although they also have 3 layers of profit, which looks like Ye Xuan, there are hundreds of people below them to support. Pure physical labor. Li Si frowned tightly. Why does he think this sounds so familiar to him? Meng Tian has no second thoughts. Upon seeing His Majesty issue an order, he immediately embraced his fists and took orders. My lord, lead the decree. Others can only follow along to receive orders. Qin Shi Huang thought to himself. It's still smart to leave annoying things to the people below to handle, and now you can be a hands-off shopkeeper. At this moment, Emperor Qin Shi Huang finally understood Ye Xuan's happiness. The paper-making business is fully entrusted to Li Si and others for handling. Their movements are very fast. Hundreds of paper mills were built overnight. The flyers for recruiting papermakers were posted all over the streets and alleys. This is what Li Si learned from Ye Xuan, who runs bookstores and posts flyers on the streets and alleys. Learn and sell now. One after another, craftsmen were recruited into the paper mill. Thousands of craftsmen gathered. The paper-making business has begun with a grand success. The paper mill began to produce continuously day and night. Pieces of paper are made. Under the operation of the machines in the Great Qin Dynasty, paper was spread throughout the city of Xianyang and gradually promoted outside the city. The surrounding towns also quickly developed a paper industry. Paper books also began to spread throughout Xianyang City and were promoted from Xianyang City. Paper and paper books began to gradually become popular in the Great Qin Dynasty. Compared to expensive items such as bamboo slips, wooden slips, and silk fabrics, the people of Daqin, led by scholars, quickly accepted and adapted to paper. This group of readers blew the paper into a dazzling mess. Light and thin as silk cloth, gifts from sages, things from heaven and earth, the gospel of scholars, revolutionary things spread through writing, and so on. As an inventor, Ye Xuan is also deeply remembered by scholars. They are singing praises of Ye Xuan. Call Ye Xuan the reincarnation of a saint. And paper is also known as leaf paper. Ye Xuan's influence gradually expanded, and his reputation spread among the scholars of Xianyang to the people of the city. Gradually, everyone in the entire city of Xianyang was unaware of Ye Xuan, who invented paper and paper books. A scholar's spirit machine animated the portrait of Ye Xuan, portraying him as a fierce mountain bandit with a face full of flesh and a crescent-shaped sword in his hand. That ferocious appearance can even make children stop crying. The scholar hung up and sold the ferocious and malevolent portrait of Ye Xuan, which had nothing to do with him. Surprisingly, it received widespread praise and even exceeded supply. As a result, the scholar made a big profit with the portrait, while those who bought it back were ordinary people who pasted the portrait on the wall as a calming and blessing thing. Of course, this matter was accidentally discovered by Ye Xuan. When he saw his self-portrait with a fierce and evil expression, his expression was very complicated. It can't be said that it doesn't seem like it, it has nothing to do with his graceful and handsome appearance. The entire papermaking workshop in Xianyang City is in full swing, and while the people in the streets and alleys of Xianyang City are discussing someone, the person who caused this series of sensations, Yi, is living a luxurious life in the mansion. Within Yi Mansion, Ye Xuan, who was blown to the sky by Xianyang City, was walking on the corridor leading to the concubine's backyard. Ye Xuan was thinking about which beauty to be fortunate to have tonight and continue his child-making career, when the system made a cold noise. Ding! The host's influence has increased, making it famous in Xianyang. Since its appearance, Ye Xuan has been pretending to be dead, and the system has finally reappeared. He couldn't help but be overjoyed. The reappearance of the system means that his efforts during this period have finally paid off. Ding! Obtain the ground-level item. Wind and Rain Calling Talisman. Ye Xuan learned about the functions and gameplay of the Wind and Rain Calling Talisman through the system. The Wind and Rain Calling Talisman, like its literal meaning, can summon wind and rain like a deity, which means it affects the weather. In ancient times, without official weather forecasts and warnings, from emperors and officials to ordinary people, they were very concerned about the weather situation. Heavy snow, heavy rain, fog, drought, and other weather conditions can have a series of impacts on them. If there is heavy snow or drought, it can lead to a series of disasters, resulting in the death of thousands of civilians. If there is bad weather during a military battle, there is a possibility of losing the battle. The most famous example is Zhuge Liang's use of the east wind to influence the war situation, leading to a major defeat of the Chao army. With the prop of the Wind and Rain Calling Talisman, Ye Xuan can easily turn the tide of the battle, making it a great weapon for marching and fighting. This system is a bit awesome. Chapter 12. Papermaking Huge Profits. Ye Xiaochuan. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 12. Paper Making Huge Profits. Ye Xiaochuan Hero Saves Beauty. The papermaking business is in full swing. Ye Xuan earned a lot of money, and Li Si and others followed suit and took a bite of soup. The Prime Minister's Mansion. Flowers bloomed in 2s and 3s in the courtyard, with gusts of fresh breeze blowing through the open window, carrying the fragrance of flowers into the study. A wisp of smoke emanated from the copper furnace. Li Sipan sat on the futon, with paper bills on the desk in front of him. He picked up the bill and looked at it. The more he looked at it, the more he couldn't hide his smile on his face. He smiled so much that wrinkles appeared, his eyes almost curved into crescents, and the corners of his mouth couldn't be pressed down. The profit from the papermaking business was beyond my expectations. In such a short period of time, my Prime Minister's mansion alone earned 200,000 koku. His voice was faintly trembling with excitement. Cheho's annual salary is only 1,000 stones. What is Cheho? That was the highest rank among the 20 nobles of the Qin Dynasty, almost below the emperor and above 10,000 people. Even Lord Che's annual salary is only 1,000 stones, and in such a short period of time, the Prime Minister's mansion has earned Lord Che's salary for 200 years. How can he not be excited? Most importantly, he does not dominate. It can be imagined how much Ye Xuan and Qin Shi Huang, who held the majority, earned. Li Si's hand holding the bill trembled faintly, and blood surged up his head in excitement. That's a huge profit. He finally understood why some people would rather risk their lives to make money. Previously, Li Si looked down upon this group of people and even sneered at them for their greed for profit. Now he understands that it's not that he's not greedy for money. I didn't give enough. The sound of decadence permeated the entire palace, and the beauties dressed in thin gauze danced their soft bodies like snakes, casting their sparkling eyes like autumn water towards Qin Shi Huang sitting above. Emperor Qin Shi Huang embraced each other and was served by beautiful women. Not very happy. Your Majesty, this is the paper business bill submitted below. Please take a look. The little eunuch buried his head deeply, afraid of offending Qin Shi Huang and the nobles. His eyes were fixed on the ground, and he raised his hands high to present the paper bill. Qin Shi Huang lazily took the bill and glanced at it without any concern. In his opinion, the world belongs to him, it's just a small profit, there's no need to worry about it, or he doesn't even need to look at this bill. I'm sure no one dares to deceive him. Now, he's just going through the process of reading the bill, and after reading it, he can continue to play with the beautiful woman. He glanced at the eunuch who wanted to throw the bill to, and asked him to put it in the imperial study. However, upon seeing the astonishing profit, Qin Shi Huang tightened his grip on the paper bill in an instant. What is this? Is it because he can't see through? Qin Shi Huang stared closely at the 1.2 million stones above, rubbed his eyes, and confirmed again that there was nothing wrong with this number. He pushed away the soft jade in his arms and suddenly stood up. 1.2 million stones. As an emperor, he also received an annual salary with his courtiers. And his annual salary doesn't even have that much. The profit of 1.2 million stones is equivalent to more than 100 times the annual salary of this emperor. Qin Shi Huang never expected that a mere piece of papermaking could bring such great benefits. He now has no intention of playing with beauties. What beauty? Don't insult money with beauty. Qin Shi Huang pushed away the weak and boneless beauty who was about to climb up and shouted, "Get lost." He headed straight to the imperial study with the eunuch, wanting to have a detailed look at the bill and see if there were any worms greedy for his small money. Alas, I shouldn't have distributed such high profits back then. Later, Emperor Qin Shi Huang regretted it. At the beginning, he divided out 3 layers of profit from the 7 layers. If he had divided the profits less or not distributed them, then all of these profits would have been his. Qin Shi Huang was filled with remorse. Ye Xuan looked at the profit bills one by one. Sure enough, it's just as I expected. No, it's even better than I expected. Ye Xuan was momentarily dazzled by the immense wealth, with a face full of excitement. But he quickly calmed down. He understood that although paper was already being promoted, the territory of Daqin was vast, and the number of cities and counties being promoted was less than 1%. Ye Xuan believed that by the time paper was promoted to every corner of Daqin, the profit margin would increase dozens or even hundreds of times again. That means his wealth will double hundreds of times again. Perhaps when paper is promoted to various parts of Daqin, I will become the richest person in Daqin. Ye Xuan thought excitedly in his heart. As Ye, the future richest man in the Qin Dynasty, thought about the future, Xian Chang's mind turned and he said, "Recently, I've been struggling with not having enough money and not taking good care of beauties. Now that I have money, I naturally want the best accessories and clothing for beauties." Suddenly becoming wealthy, Ye, the future richest man of the Great Qin Dynasty, Xian Kai generously led his beautiful woman to squander money. Gold jewelry, gold inlaid clothes, gold powder rouge. That's right, Ye Xuan, the future richest man in the Qin Dynasty, is so vulgar that he always brings gold with him. Meanwhile, on the other side, Ye Xuan left Xiangyu and met LV.So and LV.Ji, who were heading to Paisian to encounter robbers, along the way. Su. Don't. Help. The panicked cries of LV.Ji rang out. The robbers were escorted one by one, and then smirked as they sharpened their knives and rushed towards the two great beauties, LV.Ji and LV.So. An arrow pierced through the air and shot into the wrist of the robber who was holding on to LV.So's intention to commit misconduct. The robber felt pain and let go of LV.So. Ye Xuan came alone and picked up a stick the size of his thumb on the ground, using a dog-beating stick to deal with these robbers fiercely. Pack up the robbers, and Liu Gong and others thank Ye Xuan. Later, Duke LV requested Ye Xuan to escort him to Pei County. Ye Xuan saw that both Yendi and Paisian he wanted to go to were in the north. Both sides are on the same path. Ye Xuan agreed to escort them to Paisian. Under the escort of Ye Xuan, they did not encounter any danger along the way and successfully arrived in Paisian. Ye Xuan rode a horse, while LV.So and a few others sat in a carriage. A group of people marched into Paisian in a grand manner. Immediately, Ye Xuan curiously surveyed Paisian. Paisian. It is said that dog meat from Paisian is famous all over the world. When I came to Paisian over 2,000 years ago, I must go and taste it. Ye Xuan thought so. He plans to settle down and go to the restaurant to taste the taste of dog meat. Paper. High-quality paper. Take a walk and take a look, don't miss out on friends passing by. The shouting of the vendors reached Ye Xuan's ears. Ye Xuan heard this shout coldly and rode his horse to a halt. Paper. His head buzzed and his face was full of confusion. What is the situation? This is the Great Qin Dynasty. The earliest papermaking technique should have occurred in the Han Dynasty, and there should be no paper now.